Hello and welcome to the season preview show of Cats Whiskers TV. Unfortunately no Paul tonight, but Aaron does join me. We're going to be looking at both conferences for the Elite League, and first of all we're going to start off with the Gardiner Conference. So before we get into looking at the individual teams, how do you think the conference is looking overall? Because I think it certainly looks quite a bit stronger than what it did last year.
Yeah, you literally took the words right out of my mouth there, to be honest. Because look, a lot of the teams, I would even go to maybe even every team has strengthened in a certain area. Some teams have strengthened throughout the roster. So it's going to be another tough conference to win.
I mean, I think it's very difficult to actually pick a conference winner from the rosters that have been compiled by the coaches, and certainly I think when you're looking overall, Braehead, Dundee and Fife, I would say are probably the three you'll be looking at. Edinburgh, though, they've certainly strengthened, and then Hull, well, I think Hull's a wait and see. Very much a new side that's been compiled by their new coach Omar Pasha, and a lot of young guys, a lot of guys straight out of university, and I think we'll have to see how they play first, because I really can't see how they will play. I mean, I know they lost 6-3 at the weekend pre-season to Peterborough Phantoms of the EPL, but I don't place a lot of emphasis on pre-season results, if I'm honest.
No, you've said that many a time, haven't you, over Twitter? To be honest, Hull, I would fear a little bit for Hull, to be honest, especially at the start of the season. You know, they've gone through a big change in throughout the whole club, really, in their playing roster, in the management and coaching roster. It's, and like you said, there's a lot of young kids there, and they might go out there and say there's no pressure on them, because nobody's expecting anything. But I kind of feel that I think they're going to struggle, to be honest. I think, as you mentioned earlier, every other team, including the Caps, have strengthened in some numbers as well in certain teams. And I just kind of feel that Hull, if they don't get off to a decent start, they might just not crumble, but it'll be a tough season.
Well, let's have a look at the teams, and I think we'll start with probably many considered the favourites for the Gardiner Conference, and also dark horses for the league as well, from what some people have been saying. I know Paul Wheeler was favouring the Braehead clan as possible league champions. Do you think they've got a chance?
I do, yeah. I think Finn has recruited a good roster there. There's some good players there. He's got some people back. Frank being one of them, if you look on the defence. But for me, the signing of Salters is a great signing for them. I think he's going to do wonders up there. You even go to the netminders, to get Myers as well from I say from Cardiff because that's the club that he's most famous for. But that strength in the netminding there, to defence, and then you've got people like Stefan Meyer as well. That's a cracking signing. Stefan
Meyer, I think, is a big signing from. I think that a lot of Steelers fans were certainly quite upset when they realised that he wasn't coming back to the Steelers, and I think Steelers loss definitely the Clans gained there.
Yeah, and you've very much so. I mean, there was, like you say, most of the Steelers would have loved Meyer back, and I think he again. It just shows you the strength of that conference as well, that these players are going up there. And as we go through the other teams, there's some players that have moved into that conference as well. But also Davies is a good signing as well. I think that's a cracking sign. So for me, Braehead have to be up there for that conference and the league. And I think what will help them as well is they had a very successful season off the ice last season. Towards the end of the season, they started getting sellouts, which is fantastic. And if you have a settled off the ice and that's successful, then that leads to being successful on the ice. And I think that can only benefit them this season as well.
Of course, they made one of the signings of the summer, certainly on paper, in Matt Keith, who's got a hell of a pedigree and some NHL games behind him as well.
Yeah.
He looks like the sort of player who could really come in and tear up this league.
Well, I mean, I believe he got given the C at the weekend for the Aladdin Cup, and there's an article on social media today, and he doesn't know whether he is a C. But with that kind of pedigree, you're going to struggle to find somebody better to have the C on their shirt in that club, and they need somebody that's got that kind of pedigree just to take them to the next level. You know, to actually go and challenge and get that first trophy.
Okay, well, we'll take a look now at last year's Gardiner Conference champions. Somewhat surprisingly, but I think as the season went on, they fully deserved all the accolades that came their way, and that's Dundee Stars. Excellent season last season. Certainly not a flash in the pan. No. Because they seem to have strengthened very much, certainly defence and forwards for this season.
Well, I was just going to say, for me, they've built on their success of last season, and that's really what you want to see. You don't want it to be a flash in the pan, as you just described there. Again, you know, I mean, you talk Chris Blight, you talk Matt Ryan, you know, they're two big names.
Well, Ryan, of course, another one who's got NHL experience.
Yeah, and you know, as we've said on previous, I was a fan of Matt Ryan, and I think again he's going to be somebody that up there maybe gets a little bit more space, a little bit more time, can actually, I think he will put up some good numbers. And then you've got a certain Mr. Galbraith, shall we say? I mean it's a great signing. Some people might think it's a risky signing, but you know, he's still a quality hockey player.
Personally, I'm absolutely delighted to see Jay Galbraith back in the Elite League. I think he's the sort of player that fans will pay money to watch. We saw it many a time here at the NIC when he was playing for Panthers. The number of times he could turn a match with a piece of skill, with a fantastic goal. A little bit older, still, 30, 32? He's not that. He's still got it, I reckon. I mean, you have some of the best hands in the league, and you don't lose that.
You don't. But let's be honest. You know, Jade was never a player that was about, you know, up and down, you know, two-way. He wasn't that kind of player. He was very much the skillful player, lazy, but he will give you a piece of magic that will turn the game on its side and give you maybe that game-winning goal. And you never lose that. You know, as you get older, you just lose, you know, a bit of pace, etc., maybe concentration, but you'll never lose your skill factor. And look, it's like you say, it's good to see him back in the league. You know, the bars around that area will love it. You know, he'll love the bars around those area. And I just hope that he gets his head down, knuckles down, and is actually a player that, you know, Dundee can be proud of, and the fans will actually learn to love.
And of course, Dundee. Probably, very proudly for them, I suppose, Paul Swindlehurst, of course, been chosen for the Chicago Blackhawks rookie camp. Now, it may be that they take a look at him and he comes straight back, but you know, there's still that chance. You've got to be picked, and let's hope he does himself and the Elite League proud out there.
Yeah, whatever way you look at it, it's a fantastic opportunity. It's fantastic for him personally. It's fantastic for the club, and it's fantastic for the league. So, you know, there's only positives about that.
Another roster that has changed quite a bit year on year is, of course, that of the Edinburgh Capitals, and of course made probably one of the most talked about signings of the off season over the past week when a certain Joe Grimaldi was picked up by the Caps.
Yep. I'm not sure whether everybody in the Elite League will be happy to see him. But
I can think of one or two across the road who might not be.
At the end of the day, for me, it's an interesting signing. You know, he gave a bit of everything when he was at the Panthers. A lot of it wasn't kind of needed. Some of it was needed. The interesting thing for me is that Edinburgh and the Caps have always been, you know, they've always been a team that people will say finish bottom before, you know, a puck has even been dropped. And I think it's very interesting that they've chose to go for this type of player, somebody that might rack up the penalty minutes, but actually somebody that causes a bit of aggro. And, you know, the Caps aren't saying, well, do you know what, we'll try and play hockey, but you'll beat us 8-2. You know, we're actually going to be a bit nastier, a bit, you know, in your face. We're actually going to put up a fight. And for me, that's positive. The thing that I would say is a negative for a team like the Caps is you don't want to be playing penalty kill, you know, for 40 minutes of the 60. And I think that's where they're going to have to manage a player like Grimaldi and sort of say, you do it when it's needed, but we need you on the ice.
I mean, I think the thing for me with Grimaldi is when he actually played, he was a good player. His transition play was excellent. He scored over a point a game. I mean, he only played 7 games, but he still managed over a point a game in the Elite League, which is good pedigree. But I think for me, the thing with him that disappointed me the most is he took stupid penalties and often at crucial times in games which cost the Panthers. If Richard Hartman can control that, he's going to have a good player. If he can't, he's going to have a liability. Yeah,
exactly, and that's what I was just saying. And you know, for a team like Edinburgh, they can't afford to carry a liability. And I think, like you say, that's going to be down to Hartman to try and manage him and manage him correctly.
Of course, Rennie Yarrelin returning to the Caps after a season's absence, one of the top scorers in the Elite League in his last spell here, and that's a big pickup for the Caps.
Yeah, they need players. They need players like that, you know. And look, he's been there before. The fans know what they're going to get. You know, the team and the club know what they're going to get, and it's just good to have a bit of experience. Somebody that knows the team as well, knows the club, and knows what the fans expect, and he can portray that, you know, in his performances and also in the dressing room. A big character to have in the dressing room for that.
And of course, Riley Emerson, who joined the Caps, which seems a big step change for the Caps. They've often gone for a more European roster, but there's a few North Americans crept in this season, and some that have got a bit of pedigree for dropping the gloves, which is not something you usually expect from a Caps team. But it seems they're trying a different dynamic to probably try and draw a few more fans in, which let's face it, they certainly need.
Well, that's what I was saying at the start of this bit here for Edinburgh. They've obviously gone with a philosophy of, do you know what, people sort of look at us and think maybe we're a little bit soft if we, you know, they can rough us up, etc. And obviously, like you say, they've maybe gone down the North American route a bit more and willing to actually stand up for themselves and the teammates. And like you say, that's entertainment, and that can bring in the fans, and the more fans that get in there to Edinburgh, you know, it is a positive step.
Moving on to their huge rivals, just 26 miles to the north in the Kingdom of Fife and Kirkcaldy, the Fife Flyers. We know we have an awful lot of Fife fans who watch the show, and not a great deal of change for the Fife team this season. But you know, they finished last season with a lot of momentum. They got to the playoff semi-finals. They lost a very, very close game to Belfast. You know, they're coming into this season with a lot of momentum. They had a couple of decent results at the weekend in pre-season action.
But they don't mean anything.
They don't mean a lot now. Totally contradicting myself once again. But they've re-signed a lot of their star players from last season, and also added a few more. I mean, one that sticks out, I think, is Chris Auger, who looks a very, very good player.
You know, when I was looking at Fife, for me, like you've just mentioned, they had a great end of season. You know, to make it to the playoffs, and like you say, to just kind of take, you know, Belfast close. For me, it was all about then, what can we do next? What can we build on this? Can we attract, you know, a higher calibre of player? And they've done that. But also, like you say, that they've kept a good core of good hockey players, and hockey players that know Fife and know how to play in that rink. And that is crucial to Fife. You know, it's about, we've said many times, it's not an easy place to go, and you know, it's kind of going to be another tough place to go. You know, your Nickersons ended the season very, very well. A good, you know, defenseman to have, and he actually learned as the season went on, which is positive.
I mean, I think he came with the reputation of being a bit of a goon, someone who'll drop the gloves, and yes, he did do that throughout the season. But he reminded me a lot when he's playing in the way that Guy Lepine used to play here at the Panthers, that he sort of grew into that real tough, solid defensive role.
I think, and that's something that the Elite League teams kind of, that's their aim. You know, they do come here with this kind of goon reputation or whatever to drop the gloves, but we don't need goons. you know, we need good defencemen that are willing to drop the gloves and stand up for their teammates. The kind of enforcer, sort of, it's kind of a waste of an import over in this league sometimes. So in that sense, I think they did well with Nickerson. But then also you've got people, you know, like obviously Fulton, Bobby Chamon.
Chamon.
They are. That's like a coach ding. That is for you, isn't it? You know, these are good five hockey players, and I think the crowd will actually love the fact that they've built on last season's roster.
And I think one of the big re-signings they make was also Ned Luksovic. I think I pronounced his name right. Who, of course, came during the season, but really lit up Kirkcaldy and that old ring. He scored an awful lot of points and was a quality player.
Yeah, and the fact that, you know, they've re-signed is just another positive thing. And it also shows you that the work that, you know, they're doing at Fife is actually paying dividends in the fact of that these people are coming back. So it's credit to the whole team there, you know, of Dutomé and good old our friend Stewart.
Danny Stewart, yeah. Friend of the show. Of course, we'll finish this segment on the Gardiner Conference on the Hull Stingray. So we mentioned them at the start of the segment. An awful lot of players who you won't necessarily have heard of. I mean, of course, Omar Pasha taking over as coach, Carl Lauzon as his assistant coach, who are both back from last season, but a much changed squad for the Stingrays. Matt Davis being given the captaincy, good move, I think. One of the best playmaking Brits in the league.
Yeah, and I think, look, with the change that happened there, they needed somebody. They needed a player that was going to, you know, kind of bring players together and bring the club a bit of stability. And for me, he's the perfect choice there. I mean, when I was looking through the roster, you know, they've got a player called Galbraith. Thought that maybe they were signing Jade. They've got a player called Meyer. Maybe they were thinking Stefan Meyer. So they've obviously, you know, looked at their recruiting.
And another one, Tanaka.
Exactly.
Tanaka, who is the other. The other Tanaka's brother from commentary. Who, of course, is an ex-All player himself.
Yeah. So I mean, look, as we mentioned at the start, I do think Hull will struggle. I think it's going to be a hard start of the season for them. And for me, the biggest thing is you do not realise what you have until it's gone. And I'm afraid Cloutier is a massive loss for that.
Yeah, huge.
And you know, he got a lot of praise from us as well about how he progressed Hull throughout the years that he was there. And I don't actually think he's going to get his full credit until this season, because I think we'll see just actually how good Cloutier was for Hull this season.
I'm going to sit on the fence a bit with the Stingrays. I'm going to just see how they are at the start of the season, see how they play. Always been a strong team at home, and I think that's been their strength in previous seasons. So I'd see how they play out of that rink.
True, but just something that I thought as well, they've also lost their number one netminder.
Yes, of course.
You know,
big loss.
And he won them points. And you're sitting on the fence. I don't sit on fences. I think Hull will be bottom this season.
Well, because they replaced Bounds with a import netminder, David Brown, who looks good pedigree, CHL. I think they've replaced him with a decent netminder, but obviously it then depends on the defence in front of him.
I was going to say they're going to be, yes, with that pedigree you would say a good netminder, but I think he'll be facing a lot of rubber this season.
And a blow today as well with Curtis Stully leaving.
Exactly.
And,
it's not just a blow on the ice as well, it's a blow off the ice with his other job roles that he's got at the club. So it's not the greatest start, put it that way.
No, not at all. So before we move on to the Gardiner, so stick your neck on the line. Who's going to win the Gardiner?
Braehead, closely followed by Dundee.
I am going to go with Fife. I think I can just see. I think Fife with that unity and a lot of consistency from last season. I think that will carry on to the start of the season. I can see them having a similar season to what Dundee had last year. Actually, is my prediction there.
I think like the players like Salters, Davis, and Mayer are just. I think they'll just not rip up that conference, but they'll cause a bit of damage. And I actually think Braehead's built on. Every year they've kind of built on what they started on, and I think this will be the year that they actually get their hands on a trophy.
Okay, well, only another 8 months before we find out. Next, we're going to have a look at the Erhardt Conference. going to move on to the Erhardt Conference now and start with last season's champions, both conference and league, Belfast Giants, and consistency seems to be key with the Giants, certainly as far as the playing roster goes.
Well, yeah, not much change there, but a very big change off the ice with obviously Thornton coming in as director of hockey operations, and obviously the GM's gone in Todd Kelman, who is a big loss, as you'll tell us now.
Yeah, certainly. We have done this before, unfortunately. An ambulance went past. And so, yes, a huge loss for the Belfast Giants, carrying on my thread from the last take.
I thought I'd serve that up to you.
Nice one, thank you. Seamless. Exactly. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I thought Todd Kelman was very much Mr. Belfast Giants, a huge part of that organisation. And he obviously fancied the change, and we'll talk about the Cardiff Devils a little later, and the impact he should make there. But I think that's a big blow for the Giants. Steve Thornton coming in, good move for them. He's been coached them before. He's won trophies for them before, albeit not the league, but certainly won the playoffs and the British Knockout Trophy and Challenge Cup, I believe, for the Belfast Giants. So, I think it was a good idea keeping as many players from that championship winning squad as possible. I mean, you only have to look at how far ahead they were in the league last season. They've kept all of their defence, which the defence was magnificent, and I think magnificent in the playoff final, and certainly not the reason they lost it. And then they seem to have upgraded in the players that they have bought in, the three forwards they bought in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do think they have upgraded, as you say. I wasn't impressed with some of their players in the playoffs. Really, if you look at Jeffrey Swez, he looked as if he just couldn't really be bothered. And I think in the replacements that they've got in, is it Sawada,
yeah, he looks quality.
and then that
Mike Compen.
I'm sure a view from the bridge will tell us how to say it. But,
yes, and then Mark McCutcheon as well, who has recovered amazingly after getting knocked over by Frank Butcher.
Well, for me, it was the perfect moment for him to sign. So, no, look, I think they've upgraded the forwards. The defence, as look, it was the best defence in the league by a country mile last season. But my only, not concern, but my point that I make is, they're another year older. And you go through the ages. You've got Elfring at 38, you've got Sandrock at 36, Mason 33, and then you're going into a bit younger in Brookwell 28, and then obviously the Phillips at 28 and 27. There's some more. There's a bit more speed has been brought into this league by other teams, and will that have an effect on that defence? A bit older, but then you take the experience that they've got. It's going to be very interesting to see other teams' forwards against that defence, and can they replicate what they did last season this season?
I actually think the end of the season hurt them players a lot, and they're going to want to prove something, because they obviously lost the Challenge Cup to the Panthers, lost the playoff final to the Steelers, and after so far and away winning the league, they were probably heavy favourites for winning a Grand Slam, and they didn't manage it. And I actually think winning the league by such a margin was a disadvantage for them, because they had so many games that didn't really matter at the end of the season. For a good month at the end of the season, then they had to get back into competitive mode again. So I think there's a lot of players there who've got a lot to prove on that Giants roster.
Yeah, I don't know whether I fully agree with that, to be honest, because these are professional sports people, and if they really wanted a Grand Slam, they should have. Especially as you're coming into sort of the back end of the season, the home straight as it was, every game, whether you need to win it or whether you can play at 70%, you should really be looking at it as your cup final, because surely these people are experienced people, as we've talked about their ages. The people like, you can't imagine people like Lloyd, Kiefer, these kind of people to sort of put their foot off the gas and kind of let the fact that they've won the league, but it's 10 games till we go and play the Challenge Cup, first leg. And let's be honest, the first leg in the Challenge Cup final, they absolutely swept us. They showed us a new. So really, the fact that then they lost it, you wouldn't. I don't know whether I fully agree with the fact that they won the league at such a canter was detrimental. But look, I think it's going to be a challenge. It's Steve Thornton's going to have his own way of coaching them. He's going to want to play a different style of hockey to a certain degree than Poor Lady. The expectations there, they're doing a lot of good. One thing that I would say is I'm very impressed with how Belfast deal with their fans, their club. The stuff that they've done recently. The banners that they've raised, the way that they're making actually the Odyssey Arena the home of the Belfast Giants, not just on hockey nights, I think is fantastic. They really do connect with their fans, and the whole of Belfast top notch. You can't ask for anything more. So in that sense, they're onto a winner already. But I do think it's going to be harder this season than what it was last season for them.
Okay. Moving on, probably conveniently, here we move on to the Cardiff Devils, where, of course, Todd Kelman now finds himself. I think, firstly, I want to say I'm absolutely delighted that for the Devils and Devils fans, after such a turbulent and stressful season last time out, they now seem to have got a bit of stability, new owners, a quality general manager in Todd Kelman to steady the ship, and a very, very new and different looking Cardiff Devils side.
Yep.
And of course you're the coach of them now.
It's a proud moment. Look, I mean, I'm going to have to quit from my day job as Cats Whiskers TV, but hey, look, I'm looking to win things. But no, it's my brother, not me. It's Andrew, not Aaron. Idiot. Look, Yazoo, the only way's up. D-Ream, things can only get better. That's what the country...
Yazoo? You mean Yaz and the plastic population? Yazoo was Vince Clarke and Alison Moyet, mate.
Hey, I'm still young.
No, I'm old.
Look, the point that I was trying to make was it can only get better for them after the years that they've had, shall we say. I think, look, the work that Todd Kelman has done at Belfast that we've mentioned is, second to none, and I think he'll probably go double that at Cardiff as well. I think the Cardiff fans they're in for something special. The team that they've put together, what my brother has done. Look, it's very geared up in my eyes to be at the BBT. I think if they're going to struggle anywhere, it'll be on the road. It's a very physical, entertaining side for a home match. Will other teams work them out away from home? That would be my only downside. But look, they're going to be up there this season. They really are. They've kept some good players from last season. I think it's very important that they kept like Matt Myers, people like that.
Mark Richardson,
exactly.
For them, yeah.
Bounds. He's got
a lot to prove.
He's got a lot to prove. But look, you go to GB. He played instead of Murphy towards the end in those games.
Yeah.
Everybody's expecting him to kind of not fail, but not maybe reach the potential that people are saying that he has. So he's got that motivation there straight away.
He said himself on Twitter after he made the move that he needed to test himself in what he felt was the better conference. Yeah. I mean, that for me is up for debate. But he wanted to test himself against the likes of the Belfast Giants, Nottingham Panthers, Sheffield Steelers more. And fair play to him for doing that. I mean, for making that career move. And I think I said at the end of last season that if Craig Kowalski was considering retiring at the Nottingham Panthers, I'd have been very, very happy to have Ben Bowes as the number one netminder at Panthers. So, I think it's a good move for him and a good move for the Devils.
I totally agree. And look, the one thing that it brings you an extra import.
Yes,
and that's something that Belfast have benefited from, with Murphy in between the pipes. So, look, it's an exciting time for the Devils. It really is. Moving into the arena next season as well. I think this season is going to be entertaining. Will they have a trophy at the end of it? Wouldn't surprise me if they did. But if I stuck my neck out, I don't think it'll be the league.
No, but I think Challenge Cup playoffs. Good chance for them, I think. Yeah. Okay, moving on to another team who are much changed from last season. That's Coventry Blades. Of course, Mark Lefebvre came in halfway through last season as head coach from assistant coach at Sheffield Steelers. He's retained his head coach role. One of the things about the Blaze, I think, is they seem to complete their roster very early and on paper look very, very good. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, all the other teams completed their rosters and on paper looked better or had a better calibre of player. So I'm very interested to see how the Blaze play. I think Tendler, big signing after such a storied career at Hull, loads of points. Will he continue that at the Blaze? Personally, I think he will. And of course, another player who stood out at the weekend, especially in their game against Sheffield on Sunday, was Ryan O'Mara with a hat-trick. And I saw the highlights of that, and his hat-trick goal where he completely undressed Frank Doyle out of his jockstrap was a joy to behold.
Well, look, I've not seen those highlights, but you know, if you score a hat-trick in any game, it kind of puts you on the map and puts you out there as if you could be a player in the league. I think it's a big season for Coventry for me. You know, it's a big season in the sense of
we've had two very disappointing seasons, haven't they? And I think they need to give back, or certainly show the fans the sort of Coventry Blaze team that they expect, and they've not seen it for a good couple of seasons.
For me, it's consistency. You know, you think the Coventry Blaze are, well, they're going to be challenging, you know, that they've started well or they're going on a little bit of a run, and then they just seem to dwindle off. You know, it seems that towards the end of the last couple of seasons, it's kind of, they've just faded away out of even being in contention for a few things. So in that sense, I think it is a big season for Lefebvre. So I think they've made some good, you know, Tendler, he will still score you goals. You know, Gertsen is an interesting one. You know, he might not, you know, be the clinical goal scorer that people compare to Tendler, but he's also a workhorse, and he will be a good team player for the Blaze. And then, you know, Mark Smith from Cardiff as well, I think, is a great signing. So
Rory Rawlick as well, who had such a good season in Dundee last year. They picked him up earlier in the off season. I think that's a big signing for them.
I think they've made good signings. You can say, look, they recruited early, and then you look at other rosters, but paper's paper. Do you know what I mean?
It's played on ice, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Obviously, coaches have their idea of how they want to play and the players that they've got, and you can't criticise that. You know, Lefebvre has gone out there and got his roster, and he's happy with it. You know, I mean, Stewart in goal, he's a big netminder. You know, he's 6 foot something. You know, I saw the highlights against the Steelers the first game, and he is big. He takes up a lot of that goal. So that'll be interesting to see how he gets on there. But the big question for me is, will they tail off? You know, will they be able to sustain a challenge in any kind of, you know, competition over the season? That's the question for me.
Okay, moving on to our nearest and dearest, our friends and yours. That'll be the Sheffield Steelers. If you see the camera suddenly swipe to the side and hear stomping feet going out the door, that'll be my Steelers supporting wife, who's working the camera, storming out of the Bunkers Hill Inn this very evening, because I don't think she's going to like what I'm about to say. But so Sheffield, I'll let you start before I go on.
Okay.
And now Sheffield last season at this time, everybody tipped them, including myself, to win the league by a street. And I looked at their roster last season. On paper, I didn't see a weakness in it at all. On ice, completely different, especially for the first half of the season. And I think they just didn't buy into Doug Christensen's systems. So we have a new coach in Gerard Adams, former Cardiff coach, and again, a very different looking side. And there seems to be a lot of quality, but there also seems to be, well, I'll let you start.
Okay, for me, when talking about Sheffield, you know, Adams was in a win-win situation for me. He couldn't lose out of that deal that he got last season, because, let's be honest, they were pretty much not rock bottom, but they were in a dark place when Doug went. You know, they were getting barraged from all other fans, from, you know, people connected, etc. Just because Doug was meant to be this big saviour and take them back to the glory days, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. And then, you know, Adams comes in, he hasn't got really much pressure. because nobody's expecting anything, and you have to say fair play to them because they then went on to win the playoffs. For me, it's different this season. You know, it's Adams. He's been given the budget. He's been told, you know, he's recruited the roster. It's his team. So if it doesn't work out, you know, this season, then you kind of have to look towards, you know, they've also lost some, you know, some big people in there. We mentioned Gertson obviously going to Coventry. You know, Jeff Legui. You know, everybody knows
that is
what Jeff Legui is.
Steelers legend.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And moved to this just across the road to the Steel Dogs.
You know, so they've lost him. You know, they've lost Fatter, who scored the playoff winner.
Danny Mize, of course.
You know, Danny Mize, another one. Yeah. You know, they have lost some big characters and some big people that's connected with the Steelers over the years. So, how will that work? I think they've recruited some good players. For me, they've got
forwards. For me, their forward roster is probably the best in the league. Because I look at their forwards, and I certainly look at the ones that they've recruited, and you just think quality going all the way through it, apart from the third line. But certainly the top two lines, you've got your likes of Dowd, who we all know is a quality British player.
Top liner.
No, so likes of Dowd, top. So I'm saying top line, likes of Dowd, Mike Forney, who's come in, Colton Fretter, what a name, great name, and Pascal Morency, and of course the much talked about Tyler Mosienko, who has probably got a pedigree that's almost too good for the Elite League, but I think for his past misdemeanours it probably meant he's come in to the league and play. I'm very much looking forward to seeing, because I think he will be very, very strong in this league. And then you look at Matau Wa, I think it's Wa, how it's pronounced, and he looks a brilliant signing. So I think top two lines, superb.
Yep.
Third line, not so much.
For me.
And I think that's where they lack. They just don't have the depth that the likes of ourselves, who we'll move on to in a minute, and Belfast have.
No. I agree, and I think an area that Sheffield aren't as good in as you know, like the likes of us especially, and Belfast, and even some of the Scottish teams now, to be honest, is their British core. They aren't getting any younger. They really aren't, and you could say that they've tried to address that this season, but you know, you look at your favourite player, Jason Hewitt, you look at, you know, the captain now, Phillips, you look at Phil Hill, they aren't getting any younger. That's got to be a concern as the seasons draw on. But great top line, second line, that's not bad as well. Have they got the strength in depth? Only time will tell.
And then, of course, looking at the defence, they've of course got Dustin Cohn and Gord Baldwin from last season. Decent enough defencemen, don't get me wrong, but certainly I don't think some amongst the best defencemen in the league last year. Cullen Eddy looks a good signing, and Darryl Hay as well for depth. But for me, bringing back Rod Sarich, I laughed when I saw that, and I know he's regarded as another Steelers legend. He's put many years of service into Sheffield Steelers, but you just think, come on, he's had a year out, and for me, he wasn't that good when he left, and now they've brought him back. And then, of course, you've got Mark Thomas, who, well, I've never really rated, if I'm honest, and I just don't think they have that depth, and I could have a complete egg on my face at the end of the season. It's happened before, but I just don't think, one, they have the depth in their roster, and two, I don't think their defence is good enough to win a league.
I think if for their defence, you know, when you talk about like Baldwin and Cohen, it's got to be the second half, Baldwin and Cohen, you know, and it's got to be them for a season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, they've been there for a year now. They'll be expected to kind of bring the new imports, and you know, Sarich and Thomas into the roster, into the team, and to get a good, you know, line gels sort of thing. So, look, how much time will Rod Sarich get? I don't think he'll get a lot of time.
He'll get the season.
No, I mean like actually in a game.
Oh right, sorry.
You know, I don't think they're going to like, you know, cut him after a month. But I'm saying, you know, I think he'll be used quite sparingly. Look, you've got to look, the one thing that they've still got Frank Doyle, and
who proved he was a very good netminder.
On certain games, he kept them in the game.
Playoff final, I think.
Exactly,
is a
prime example.
Yeah.
He also had some dodgy games as well, but doesn't every netminder to a certain degree. So they'll be expecting a lot from him. It's interesting at Sheffield. You know, they've got not a monkey off their back, but they won a trophy last season. They'll be buoyed by that. They'll want to, knock us off our perch. They'll want to, take things off Belfast. It's just whether they've got the strength in depth for me.
I mean, I say these things and then I get egg on my face, and it's happened many times in the past. And like I say, I did tip them to win the league last season, and they didn't. This season, they'll probably go and storm it now. I've said all that, but I just can't see it from that roster, obviously, on paper. Okay, so is that about it?
I've got nothing more to say.
No, of course we now move on to the GMB, Nottingham Panthers, crossover there at the NIC. And I suppose we've had the benefit already, having seen the Panthers in competitive action in the Champions Hockey League. Of course, they had the games in Slovenia before that, and they've had the tournament this weekend in France. So they've had a very, very good build-up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the quality of opposition that they've faced so far. I suppose it's sort of pre-season again, and then moving back into the season with the CHL again coming up this weekend. Yeah. So Panthers going to start a week later than everybody else. Of course, there's been a lot said about the number of imports that have been bought in, obviously to compete in the CHL. But you know what? I look at the roster, and you're right. I think people are right when they say it. I don't think the forwards are as strong as they have been in the past. That's not to say I don't think we have got strong looking forwards, because you've got the likes of Bruce Graham, who will probably score 25, 30 goals this season. David Clark, who always scores a hatful of goals. And then you sort of look at the secondary scoring, your likes of Robert Farmer, Greg Jacina, Chris Higgins, who will also score goals, Brandon Benedict, Robert Lakovic. I think there's a lot of goal scoring and point scoring potential within that forward roster, but I think where the Panthers excel is in defence.
Yeah, it's pretty much that's been your statement, hasn't it? With us, that you think we've got a very, very strong defence. I mean, I'll just throw that back a quick question to you. Do you think we've got a stronger defence than Belfast?
It's a difficult question, because obviously we've seen the Belfast defence together, and we know that they're a very strong defence. I certainly think it has the potential to be a stronger defence than Belfast, because if you look at the sort of wealth of defensive talent that is on that roster, there's only Colby Cohen who is on the CHL contract. Everyone else is signed for the season, and you've got some real quality in there. I mean, I think I picked out Charles Landry, who was, of course, part of the Tampa Bay organisation last year. Mike Baroob, who played with Bruce Graham for the Allen Americans, one of the top defencemen in the CHL, captained them to the CHL Championship. Cody Wild, who's just arrived, who again looks another quality defenceman, and Schmidt. We know how good Stephen Lee is. Yeah. I think the only thing is they've probably got to get used to playing with each other, because it is Lee apart a completely new defence. Yeah,
I mean, but when you've got somebody like Stevie Lee who scores 2 goals in the CHL, and the 2 goals that he did score, then it's not a bad person to learn from and look to. Look, it's very promising to see a strong D like that. Well,
it's such a departure from past Panthers teams who probably not usually had or been renowned for a strong defence.
Yeah, not necessarily. Well, I mean, you look back to the season where we were successful, and we had a strong defence there. The likes of Beckett, Weaver was class that season, Lepine. We had a defence then, but this season we've got strength in depth in the defence. And when you start with obviously K-Wall, nobody needs to say anything else about K-Wall.
Best netminder in the league, and I don't. And if anyone argues with that, you're wrong.
He showed it in the CHL for me, which you could accept a bit of rustiness, but you know,
the game
some of
against
the
Luco, he was magnificent.
Oh, it was like he's been playing for 6 months and he's just, you know, on fire. So if that's what we're going to get this season, then, and I think he's got a point to prove. Not necessarily in performance or anything, but because he was out injured for over 20 games last season.
Yeah.
So I think he'll want to play and he'll want to perform. So that's positive. The defence, you talk about the forwards. For me, it's more kind of like, look, Bruce Graham is the first person that everybody will be, like you just said, you know, 25, 30, whatever, however many goals. He needs somebody to put them on a plate for him to score. He will still score them on his own, but you know, he benefited greatly from David Ling when he was here. You would think that maybe Higgins is going to be that person for him, but how long Higgins is out for, we don't know, so that could be a blow. But for me, it's about a team scoring. It's a bunch of forwards that will score you goals. Like you said, Clarkey will get some goals, but for me, we can't expect Clarkey just to come back from shoulder surgery and expect to start pinging them in from, you know, the blue line, etc., or whatever. He's got to be given time to get back in, because what you've got to realise is he's not going to be as fresh. He's not going to be match fit as other, because he's going to be behind the others. So in that sense, but then, you know, your Laccos, your Farmers, I want to see more from Jacina. I want to see why he's back here this season. Benny, I think, is just. I wouldn't swap Benny for many players at all, to be honest. I think he's done a cracking job with the C as well in Clarkey's absence. He's to coin a cliche of somebody, he's the heartbeat of our team for me now. Yeah. I'm very excited to see how our pre-season will affect us in our league. I'm very excited to see whether we can take our CHL kind of form.
It's not the sort of form you want to take.
I don't mean form as in a result.
The experience.
I mean, the whole experience. The form as in how we're playing, how we play into the elite league. Because if we do that, then we should really, as fans, be very positive for the season. So,
yeah.
But, you know, we'll see, I suppose.
Okay. Well, before we finish up, neck on the line time again. So conference. Conference. I'm going to Panthers to get that monkey off their back and win the conference. And for the league, I'm also going to go Panthers. I just think defence wins championships, and I think there's the potential for that defence to win a championship with the depth it's got. Plus, I think the British depth that Panthers have is the envy of probably every other team in the conference. Yeah.
I think it's, for me, both the conference and the league is between two people. For me, it's for Panthers and Belfast. I think we will secure both, but I also think the league will be close with Braehead. I think one of them could potentially nick it, but I will go for Panthers Conference and Panthers League.
I spoke to Mr. Barm earlier, who's sadly absent, and he went for Belfast. So.
What does he know?
Well, we'll see at the end of the season, I suppose. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. And thank you very much for either watching or listening on the podcast as we have it now. So we will be back next week. We will be looking ahead to Panthers' first match in the Elite League against Cardiff Devils, and also looking back on Panthers in the CHL from this coming weekend. But until then, thanks for joining us. Goodbye.